Now I'd like to introduce to you our morning keynote. Her name is Mia Ives-Rublee. Not only has Mia dedicated her life to civil rights activism, she is an athlete, an adaptive athlete, competing internationally in track, come on up, Mia, road racing, fencing, and CrossFit. I talked to her a few minutes ago, made me tired to hear all the things that she's doing, and I'm not. So she's very active. You go, girl. She does public speaking across the country on issues relating to social justice and work to enable everyone to participate fully in all aspects of society. Mia helped coordinate accessibility services for over 41,000 people who attended the first Women's March in Washington, and she continues to advocate that that the marches in DC remain fully inclusive. Get this, she was named by Glamour magazine as one of the 2018's Women of the Year. Folks, she's a true superhero, and she is deserving of the cape. She does have a picture of her with the cape flowing in the back. Everyone, please let's give a round of applause for Ms. Mia Ives-Rublee.
Is this mic working? Yeah? Can everybody hear me? Yeah? All right. How's everybody doing this morning? Awesome. Thank you so much for coming out this morning. My name is Mia Ives-Rublee, and I wanted to tell you a story about myself. I've always seen my story as a mathematician's improbable equation, because X plus Y never in my wildest dreams would become Z. Because so many people in my life told me that it would be impossible to succeed because of my disability. Is my presentation up? My presentation is not. Hold on for a sec. All right, so we're not going to have my presentation, but that's cool. All right. So how does a disabled girl who was adopted from South Korea go from being an international competitive athlete to help organize, and then become a person that helps organize one of the biggest marches in history? My story began in Busan. I was born in South Korea during the time when the country was still recovering from multiple colonizations and the Korean War. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about Korea in the news lately, and that's something that greatly affects me and my personal history. My birth family, which I believe were probably impoverished, dropped me off at an orphanage in hopes that I would find a family that could take care of me. I went to the doctors at the orphanage, and the doctors diagnosed me with a congenital disability called osteogenesis imperfecta. Oh, hey! Yay! See if I can catch up. Nope. Can you switch slides? Ah, okay. That's okay, right? We don't need it. Oh, there we go. And one more slide. There we go. So osteogenesis imperfecta, which basically means that I break bones very easily. Switch slides. There we go. How many out here have broken bones before? All right. Now, how many, let's take a tally. How many have broken one bone? Yeah, a lot of you, okay. 2? Okay, some of you. 3? A little smaller. 4? 10. Wow, okay. So for me, I've broken so many bones that I've literally lost count. Because I was so fragile, it was hard for me to know what I could and couldn't do. I didn't know a lot of other people with disabilities, and I remember I remember a lot of adults telling me, no, be careful, you can't do that, throughout my entire childhood. Now, I'll tell you, from that experience, it's hard to dream of what you can do when everybody tells you what you can't do. Switch slides, there we go. It was sports that really taught me how to dream. I remember taking a trip to the 1996 Paralympic Games. I was 12 years old at the time, so I'm dating myself right now. And I really didn't, at 12 years old, I really didn't know how to answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? None of the usual answers really seemed to fit a girl who broke a bone at least once a year. When I arrived at Atlanta, I was astonished at how normal I got to feel. Growing up, I was used to being stared at for being in a wheelchair or being short. But at the Paralympics, it wasn't unusual to see wheelchairs, crutches, canes, prosthetics. People weren't staring at me. For the first time, I didn't feel like a freak show. The weight of people's expectations weren't weighing me down at that time. I got to feel free at the Paralympics. So I went to the Paralympic opening games, and it was amazing. I got to see all these people, all these athletes with disabilities as they walked, rolled, and limped across the field in their uniforms, proudly stating that they were athletes. They were being able to celebrate their physical prowess rather than being admonished for their physical disabilities. Seeing them sparked something within me that continues to burn to this day. That night, under the Paralympic flame, I began to dream. Switch slides. With my parents' tentative blessings, and they were extremely tentative, I was allowed to compete in wheelchair track. Now, when I was competing, I learned a lot of lessons. My coaches taught me about persistence and about pushing through the finish lines and about believing that I deserved the same opportunities as all my peers. And my parents, who schlepped me across the country to go to practices, track meets, swim meets, basketball competitions, they taught me about self-advocacy, because there were times when I was trying to compete on my high school track team that my high school track team would leave me behind because they didn't feel like it was extremely important to get an accessible bus. And that was something that was extremely, that echoed throughout my life. They showed me the tenacity and the skills that I needed to talk to my coaches, to talk to school administrators, and to eventually talk to the county administrators. Their work allowed me to become the first wheelchair athlete to compete in the North Carolina State High School Championships. I didn't know then, but they helped to lay the groundwork for my advocacy and my activism today. My experience in athletics helped me learn how to goal set. Ever since the 1996 Paralympics, I knew I wanted to become a Paralympian. As I got through high school, I began to think about college. Now, a lot of times people with disabilities are told that they can't go to college, or that they have to go to a community college, or they have to do something that maybe they don't want to do. But after participating in sports and after becoming more independent, I learned how to push myself. I learned how to get dressed by myself. I learned how to take showers by myself. And that learning and that process allowed me to become more independent. And that made college a possibility for me. That made college going into another state possible for me. By the time I hit junior year, I knew I wanted to go to the top wheelchair sports college in the country, which was the University of Illinois. Switch slides. Now in college, I was an overachiever. I put the skills that I learned in track from my coaches and my parents into my academics and into my extracurriculars. I learned how to balance my school education with my athletic career. And during my time in college, I learned time management skills, persistence, and goal setting. And I used those skills while I was in college. I'd spend 2 hours at practice every day, attend classes, and participate in extracurricular activities, including an interactive social justice theater. It was my sociology major and my time in theater group that began to turn my interest towards social justice work. I began to work in social justice spaces by attending protests, by going to student leadership councils and being on those councils, by going to fight against certain things that I felt were unjust and created inequalities within our community. I also learned about creating safe spaces to talk about discrimination and community violence. When I graduated, my dreams began to change. I was still an athlete at heart, but I began to realize that I really wanted to work towards creating positive changes in my community. After undergrad, I enrolled into my master's program in social work at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And I planned on continuing to train for the Paralympics. Flip slide. Unfortunately, the universe had other plans for me, and I got severely injured my first week of college at my master's program. I shattered my femur during my internship, and that resulted in 9 surgeries in 9 years. And I know a lot of you out here know that experience of just like catastrophic changes that change sort of your life perspective. The multiple surgeries really forced me to reevaluate my dreams and goals. I began to realize I wanted to focus on giving back to my community, so I redoubled my efforts in school. And after graduation, I began to work to help people with mental health disabilities obtain jobs within their communities. Switch slides. Now, 2006 really changed a lot for me. After the election, I remember waking up and just feeling shocked. But after that shock wore off, I made a commitment to myself. I would put more effort into fighting for vulnerable communities. The first thing that I found that caught my eye was a little thing on social media that I saw, an event called the Women's March. I began to see posts all online about the Women's March, and at that time I had no idea what it would become. And I decided that that would be the first thing, and just let me tell you, being the first thing, it's not the easiest thing to get involved in as your first protest, but that's what I did. And when I committed to that, I began to look online to see if where I could get involved. And I began to notice a pattern that people were asking, what are you going to do about accessibility? What about disabled people? Where are your goals on dealing with issues that affect the disability community? And I noticed that the organization didn't seem to be talking back to these people and talking about the inclusion of disabled people within the movement. That was when I decided that I knew what I had to do. I remember vividly the times that I was left out at school, on the track team, on my course classes, and that really pushed me to decide to take action. I knew that if no one spoke up about the issues like my parents did for me, then there would be thousands of people feeling the same way. Switch slides. Okay, I had no idea what I was going to get myself into. I spent several weeks emailing the original organizers of the march. My friend Jen, who's here, she was actually with me in Orlando when I was sending emails to these people. I was here in Orlando to go to Harry Potter World, and they contacted me while I was here in Orlando, and I was just sitting there on the phone talking to several different organizers, telling them that they needed to include disabled people, and that inclusion needed to be a full inclusion, not just that accessibility, but that their unity principles needed to change. They need to include disabled people in the issues that affect our lives. They need to make sure that accessibility was on their top priority list and not at the end of their list. So I spent hours organizing, coordinating, trying to ensure that the unity principles were inclusive of disabled people, that the march was accessible so that people with disabilities could feel included within the march. And on the day of the march, it was estimated that about 40,000 disabled people participated, and that's more than any march in history. And what I found this connection, I found this interesting connection, this feeling that I got while organizing and while participating in the march. It was very similar to the highs that I got from participating in athletics. I got this adrenaline rush, and it was the same rush. Switch slides. The lessons that I learned in athletics have helped me to make myself a better activist and advocate. I've spent the past year speaking with senators and speaking with House of Representatives to talk about issues that affect the disability community. I've marched 18 miles to go against gun control, which significantly affects the disability community. And I've spoken to thousands, telling them my story, urging people to act to better their community. Switch slides. Oh, this is it. Now, I'm asking you to take this moment and think about your own story and your own life. Think about the memorable events that help to shape your worldview. We all have stories to tell, stories that can inspire us, can lead us towards change. I ask that you use your own stories to fight for the issues that motivate you to act, just like the superheroes that are in your favorite novels and in your favorite comic strips. This is how we make changes that we want to see in the world. So I want to thank you so much for inviting me to come here and speak to you today. And I want to right now invite anybody to ask questions. I know that there's a mic that is going around in the audience, so feel free to raise your hand, and I'll try and answer your questions as best as possible.
Hi, Mia. No. Test. Hi, Mia.
Yeah, it worked that time.
It did?
Yep.
Hi, Mia. My name is Malcolm Harris Gowdy, and I'm with the Stand Up for Independence group, and I just want to commend you on what you're doing for people with disabilities. And I have a great story as well. I was diagnosed with autism and cerebral palsy when I was 3.5. I did not talk until I was like 4. And I have a dream just like you do, and just like all of us in this room do. My dream is to become a sportscaster.
Great. That sounds awesome. Yeah.
So I want to ask you a question to those that feel like they don't have confidence, that don't believe in themselves, people that have special needs. What would your message be to those that feel like they don't believe in themselves, they feel like they want to give up, like they don't have hope? What would your message be?
As I said before, I totally understand that feeling of just like feeling like, especially when a lot of people are telling you that you can't do something, or that your disability is going to impede your life, or I really think that finding something that you're passionate about and that you're good at and just going for it is the best suggestions that I have. Find people that you really, really admire. Talk to them about how they went through the process of getting where they got, and really take in what they suggest, and see what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Hi, Mayor. My name is Crystal Sims. I'm the president of Stand Up for Independence. I just want to know, you have an amazing story, and you have inspiration all of us. Everybody can hear that. You have a great heart. And to let you know, with the college you're going to, I am in college also.
Great, wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that.
Okay, I have a question. What advice can you give us? What advice you can give us?
What advice can I give you?
Yeah.
What advice would you like?
For the future.
For the future? Just go after your dreams. That's the best advice that I can give you, is,
Hi, Mia. My name is Nikki Graybill. I'm from Sarasota. I'm a Special Olympian, and I have held a job at the Sarasota County School Board for 25 years. And people never thought I would ever have a job, but I don't care. I take my job very seriously, and I am a weightlifter, and I just think you're an inspiration. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. My name's Linda Montalbano. I'm a special education advocate. Since '74, the disabled have been allowed to go to public school. Do you find that they're doing more adaptive physical education and allowing more of the disabled to participate in physical education and athletic sports and intramural sports in school as part of their phys ed?
That's a complicated answer, because I would say, in general, I'm sure there is a slow change. Unfortunately, it's very slow. I know that it took a lot of effort and work, especially from my parents, to really make sure that I could participate on the track team. And I know a lot of other people's stories are very, very similar, especially a lot of, and this is just for people who actually know what sport they want to get into. For people who aren't involved in athletics, I'm sure it's even harder to get schools to be more inclusive. So I would just say, my best suggestion is to get connected with, there's adaptive athletic teams all across the nation, and I know all of them are working on pushing legislative efforts and efforts within their own communities to ensure that there's more inclusion within the school systems. So I'd suggest getting connected with them and seeing sort of what their actions are in order to continue pushing for more inclusion.
Hi, I'm a mom of 2 Down syndrome girls. I also have a daughter who has Turner syndrome. They have gone through high school. They've gone through all the elementaries, middle school, high school. Turned out that one of my daughters is not able to read or write. She went 4 years on high honors, walked out with the high school diploma, natural high school diploma, just like we would get when we would go to college, go to school. I have taken them to the Vocational Rehabilitation Center to try to get them jobs, and nobody will hire them. They say they are unworkable material. But yet I can teach them at home, and they can do and follow simple directions, but yet in the community they will not accept them. Where and how can I get somebody to listen to me and give them a job that is their goal in life? They want to work.
I find that's a big problem within the disability community. Is a lot of people don't believe that we are able to work. I know I actually worked for vocational rehabilitation services within North Carolina, and understand that there's still a lot of opposition within our communities and within even the service workers that are supposedly trying to provide services to us, is that there's a lot of pushback on believing that disabled people can work, and when they can work, that they deserve equal pay for the work that they do. My suggestion is, if you're continuing to get pushback, is one, if you're just talking to the counselor to see if you can talk to the manager or the director. That's one way to see if you can push your counselor to be more proactive. If you've already done that, then my suggestion would be to see if you can work with the disability rights organization to see if they can take up your case and really push to make sure that your kids can get the jobs that they want.
Okay, but I didn't finish. How can I get them into some sort of program to help them learn so that they can read and write?
I don't really want to give you exact advice just because I don't know your kid's situation. So my suggestion would be to see if you can talk to a disability rights organization. They should have, especially locally, they should be able to help you more around that.
And they're in the exhibit hall, disability rights. It's in the exhibit hall today, ma'am. Here we have another question for you, Mia.
Okay, right now with me, you're an inspiration because all throughout high school, middle school, elementary school, I had a learning disability and I couldn't comprehend what I was being taught. Now, because of that, it's just making me think more like I should go back and finish high school because I only had 2 credits left and I couldn't graduate on time. So like that's my dream right now, is to get back into the flow of education and get my high school GED. So yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Good job
Yes.
for doing what you do because it's awesome.
Well, let me just tell you that I also had a learning disability growing up and dealt with difficulties in school as well. And that's just something that I know is really, really difficult, and it can really feel impossible to get through classes, especially when you're spending more time on your homework than your peers are, and it just feels like it's bogging you down. But yeah, I really commend you on going back, and I think if that's your goal, then I would suggest you go and get it. Yeah.
As a father of a son with special needs, I thank you for your advocacy in speaking to lawmakers on behalf of the needs of individuals with disabilities. As a community, what can we do to get their attention? Because I think that's one of the frustration a lot of us deal with, is that there are a lot of good people like yourself working with lawmakers, but it's not getting the type of movement. What can we do as a community to help move things along?
You know, I think that there's a lot of issues around feeling like we're alone, especially the disability community, where we spend a lot of time fighting to make sure things don't get rolled back, when, you know, like, we would like to be fighting for things to like improve rather than like things to not dissolve, basically. And I really suggest that you, as you know, the best things that we can do as a community is to get involved in you know, on the local level of getting involved with organizations that are doing the work. Also, going to your school board meetings and pushing that, because that's a huge thing that I think a lot of people aren't paying attention to, is what's going on school board meetings. Also, a lot of the local elections, a lot of the people that are running for office are not running against anybody. And so that's something that I would suggest, especially people with disabilities, especially, you know, parents who have kids with disabilities, to go after these, you know, these positions. And if you don't want to run, then really pushing the people who are running to get their stuff together and really support this community by showing that you're paying attention to what's going on.
Thank you. Here's one more.
Hello, my name is Michael Lincoln. I'm from St. Lucie County for Stand Up for Independence. And I want to say your story is amazing. It's a very inspiration. And I wanted to know what made you get motivated to go up to DC to do the marches, and what made you get motivated to do Safe Space?
I talked a little bit about this in my speech, but you know, I think that for me, I grew up as an individual that has a very complicated sort of situation where I've very much understood that that discrimination, social inequalities, and social justice issues all intertwine together, and that if we don't fix one situation, then it has a ripple effect on all communities. And so that perspective really helped me understand that you know, yes, I'm passionate about one issue, but I'm passionate about all issues around social justice and social inequalities. And so that perspective, along with the work that my parents did, really helped me realize that that's something that I wanted to do. And seeing sort of what's going on today, and the issues that are going on today, I knew that I couldn't stay silent. And if I had a voice, then I would have to use it.
Mia, we have 3 more questions.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience with us.
Hi, Mia. I have 2 questions for you. You said you were born in South Korea. I'm sure you still have friends and relatives that live over there. Are you hopeful that the current talks between our administration and North Korea will better the conditions in South Korea?
I am not an international expert on South Korea. I was actually, I was born there, but I left when I was 3 years old. I was adopted, so I don't know if I have family back there. However, the situation there is something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm just sort of, I am hopeful for peace within South Korea and North Korea. I understand that there's a lot of complicated situations and a lot of issues, a lot of pieces moving around that I don't know about. So I don't want to give like a succinct like answer. I'm hopeful, but you know, like I don't know what's going to go down, and yeah.
Okay.
I'm just hopeful, yeah.
Thank you. My second question is, you are far more beautiful than any Kardashian that I know. If you could get a meeting in the Oval Office with President Trump, what would you like to talk about?
What would I like to talk? Oh, that's a loaded question. I think it would have to be, I would have to agree that it would be a series of meetings, because I don't think one meeting would work. And I think we would have to come to an understanding of where each other are and agree on certain terms before I'd be willing to sit down and talk to him. I think I don't want to be used as a piece within the game. I want to make sure that my opinions and my what I believe in come out throughout the work that I do, and so we would have to come to certain agreements before I would be willing to meet with him.
Good morning, Mia. My name is Dr. Rob. My background is in education and psychology. And I'm just curious, you work so many years with people with disabilities, especially with employment. And there seems to be a real dilemma out there, especially with a lot of employers hiring people with disabilities. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if you possibly would encourage entrepreneurship, the microenterprises, especially we see here at the cafe. My wife and I are creating a cafe and a learning center in South Florida to employ people, an ice cream parlor, to employ people with disabilities, to give them that start. And I was just wondering if you, how do you feel about entrepreneurship as opposed to, hiring people with disability, with regular employers?
I think there's room for both. I definitely want to see integrated settings because we are pushing for integrated communities, right? The more that we can see disabled people in regular environments, the better people have an understanding of disability, right? But I do understand sometimes we have to create our own tables. Sometimes we have to create our own situations, and that can actually help improve the narrative as well. So I think there's room for both.
Last one.
I want to congratulate you on all of your accomplishments. I think you truly are a superhero, and that you should always continue telling your story. I was born blind and lost my hearing when I was 8 years old. And then later on in life, I had a stroke. But I didn't stop. I didn't give up on my dreams. I'm still continuing despite raising 3 children with disabilities. I finally stood up and said, no, I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. I'm going to reach my dreams no matter what it takes. So I got up and told my Division of Blind Services counselor, I'm going to find a job and I'm going to continue fighting for people with disabilities. And they said to me, go for it. So I went out in the community and applied for many different jobs, but did not get a single interview. And one day I went to one of my college interpreters and said, I need a job. Can you help me? She said, come on. So I went to the local Center of Independent Living in Jacksonville, And that day I told her, I'm not leaving until you find me a job. So she said, if you can intern here at the Independent Living Resource Center, we can help you. So I started interning, and 6 months later, I was hired. And that was 4 years ago.
Congratulations. Wow. Good job.
It didn't stop there. I told my boss, I said, we need help for these people. There are so many needs here in Florida for people with disabilities. We need affordable housing so these people can have an independent place to live in their community, so we can empower them to live independent, self-empowered lives. And there was a housing shortage all over Florida. So I said, I have to do something about this. I have to help these people. And he said, what can you do? I said, I need to talk to people. I've got to get some help. So then Director of Marketing and Development, Beth Meyer, who is now the Director of the Florida Council of Independent Living, told me we'll work together. And so we started reaching out to the ARC Jacksonville. We reached out to Disability Rights of Florida. We reached out to Senator Nelson, Senator Rubio's office. We got the agencies together and we formed the Northeast Florida Affordable Accessible Housing Task Force, and we're continuing to fight.
Well, thank you very, very, very much for sharing your story. That's a great story.
Mia, we do have one more question, but it is the last one.
Sorry, is this on? Sorry, Mia. I actually am personally curious, and I want the audience to hear a little bit about it as well. How did you hear about being selected as Glamour's Woman of the Year? What was that like, and what was it like speaking at their awards ceremony?
Oh, gosh. So I learned while I was at another conference called Netroots Conference. I got an email saying that several of the women on the Women's March organizing team were going to receive the award. So the process was just saying, I mean, you have an option of accepting it, of course, and then the Women's March was trying to decide who would speak on behalf of Women's March. And so they chose me, which was kind of shocking. And so we sat down and we sort of talked about what I would go over in my speech, and sort of worked in coordination with that. And then they invited us to do a photo shoot, which was amazing, and we went up to New York and did a photo shoot, which for me means a lot, because I know a lot of disabled people aren't represented within the magazines that we purchase, you know. So I thought that was an extremely important part of the process. And then they told us about the award ceremony and that we would, you know, get to go up to New York again and accept the award. So it was just a mind-blowing experience. Yeah. All right, thank you so much, everyone.